This episode is brought to you by Denver Film. Hey movie lovers, the Denver Film Festival is happening November 1st to the 10th, and this is your chance to see major films before anyone else. From red carpet premieres to must-see movies, this festival has it all. But it's not just about the big titles. You'll also discover hidden gems and indie films you won't find anywhere else. So don't wait. Head to denverfilm.org to get your tickets and experience 10 days of incredible cinema. That's denverfilm.org. We'll see you there. This episode is brought to you by the Denver Public Library. Come down Sunday, November 3rd at 10 a.m. for the Denver Central Library grand reopening ribbon-cutting ceremony. The library will open at 11 a.m. for you to explore redesigned spaces like the new Children's Library and the one-of-a-kind teen space. Enjoy live entertainment, refreshments, giveaways, and more. RSVP is encouraged at denlib.org/celebrate. That's denlib.org/celebrate.
Today on CityCast Denver, 'twas the Friday before Election Day, and the state's top election official maybe did a tiny little whoopsie. So as always, Bree Davies and a fantastic guest join me to round up the week's biggest stories, from the calls for Jenna Griswold's resignation to Denver's role in the big cat hunting debate to controversial murals, some new data on homelessness, and so much more. Today is Friday, November 1st. I'm Paul Caroli, and here's what Denver's talking about. Welcome back to CityCast Denver, the show about the city where, literally, according to the Clear Creek County Sheriff's Department, they actually said this. Tren de Aragua is now taking over luxury Airbnbs in the foothills. This is a real thing, and we have to talk about it.
They're in with this Aurora PD leaker, whoever's been sending Daniel Jurinsky quote-unquote information.
Yeah, intel.
Intel about Tren de Aragua. This cracked me up because I was like, you think they went all the way to Evergreen? And like what? They had a wild party? Also, people have wild parties at Airbnbs that are not Tren de Aragua.
Exactly. But it's like, it's my favorite election story, I think, I have to say. Because now,
so asinine.
Ever since this whole hysteria started, I've just been like, everything that goes wrong is just like, Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua. Someone left the pan on my stove.
It's the new thanks, Obama,
Tren de Aragua snuck in.
Style thing. Yeah, I imagine living in that much fear. What a wild place to be.
I don't know what evidence they think they have, these sheriffs in Clear Creek County.
Probably as much as Daniel Jurinsky had in Aurora. Not much.
Yeah, not to downplay like the actual, like there are crimes happening, like there are like bad dudes doing bad stuff. Like this is a tough situation in this apartment building.
But that's not this.
This is a raging party that's in an Airbnb. It's not
so bizarre.
Yeah.
Also, that's like it's not like you can just sneak into it. I guess you can sneak into an Airbnb, but somebody has to rent it.
Mm-hmm.
Someone has to have a record of renting it. So
yeah,
who knows? Good luck with that.
Terrible.
Good luck with that.
They're taking over the Airbnbs.
Evergreen. Oh, weird.
It's Friday. We're doing a look back at the biggest stories of the week, as we always do on Friday. Our favorite end of the week feature. We're here in the lovely 5280 Magazine studios.
No one is here because it's Halloween, and I guess people don't come to their office on Halloween.
The office is emptier than normal.
Which is usually like 10 people. Now it's like 2.
Although our guest was telling me about a little interaction in the elevator, costumed somebody. There's wickedness afoot.
No, it was me. Did you see the guy?
Oh, no. I was like, I don't know what.
I saw a weird guy in a costume acting weird.
Yeah. What's up? What happened there? What was the costume again?
Okay, Elliot, I couldn't tell what the costume was. He like jumped on the elevator right after I got on, and then he was just kind of like, I don't know if it was part of his costume, his anxiousness, but he had like a gold chain on, all black, long curly hair wig, black hair wig, and then like a black winter hat and sunglasses. And I was like, what floor? And he was like, 8. And then he got off on my floor. And I was like, this is not 8.
Which is not 8.
Hate to say it,
that
y'all.
might just be a guy. That might just be
Might just be a weird guy.
a weird guy on Halloween. It's
downtown.
kind of like how a broken clock is right twice a day. Like
This is the day
weird
where
people
he
are
looks
normal.
This is true.
Once a year.
Alternative explanation, Tren de Aragua. Taking over the elevators.
Trent
downtown
Aragua in like a
Denver.
fresh wig, and like this was not a beat up looking Halloween costume.
Yeah.
Someone just bought these accoutrements at Spirit.
It's trouble.
So
Well, you've heard her voice. We have a great guest today. She's the state politics reporter for the Aspen Times. Welcome back to the podcast, Elliot Wensler. Hey.
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Elliot, how's your Halloween going?
Well, I'm pretty disappointed in myself because I have not done any costume at all. I have just like kind of forgotten that Halloween is happening.
it is election season.
It's election
and for reporters,
season.
this is just like we don't really have anything else on our brains.
I literally last weekend I was like out and about and saw people in costumes and I was like, I wonder what that's about. So I was like,
we learned that's called Halloween.
it was Halloween because now obviously Halloween is on a Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
But I am gonna go hand out candy at a friend's house who actually gets trick-or-treaters. But
That's
I don't have a
nice.
costume. I don't know what I need. I'm gonna have to pull something together, which is what I do every Halloween anyway. So
Well, we got a little bit of business here before we get into our top story. Boy, what a doozy of a story, too. But the business is we did a membership campaign last week, wrapped
We
it up.
did.
Just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who joined.
So many cool people signed up to
Old
support
members,
us.
new members. Really, the support was overwhelming. You
was
you
awesome.
made us look good in front of the bosses. I'll just say that.
that's true.
Which I love. And it's not too late if you do want to join the membership program. It would be huge for us. We're planning bigger, better things in the new year. Your support would help us do them even better. So if you do join, you get a couple of perks. You get ad-free podcast listening. You get a little events email, little event curated.
Every Monday, you get a curated email. If you were like, what should I do this weekend? Peyton puts those together for you every Monday.
Yep. $8 a month. That's all it costs.
So.
Starts there. Obviously, you can do more. I mean, which we would love, but $8 a month. Pretty good. Membership.citycast.fm/Denver is where you sign up. The link is in the show notes. Let's get to that top story. My God. The election. There was a situation with our Secretary of State, Jenna Griswold, who is the state's top elections official. It started on Tuesday when the Colorado Republican Party alerted the local media to a spreadsheet on Secretary Griswold's website that included a hidden tab full of passwords for elections systems across the state. Griswold's office explained very promptly that they have a multi-password system. The election is actually safe, according to them. But GOP Chair Dave Let's Go Brandon Williams says that, quote, this demonstrated a major lapse in basic system security and password management. Elliot, this is your beat. What do you think?
yeah, I mean, it's just it's a really difficult story to be coming up at this exact moment. Like, I think there were already so many questions that were coming up. There were a lot of people wondering about election integrity. That's obviously been such a theme since the last election. And now in the final days, I think this is just a headache for so many people. The Secretary of State's office obviously is scrambling. They're now having a million media requests they're responding to. They're doing all of these interviews, but also county clerks who were not initially alerted to this. And some of them, it sounds like, found out about it through the GOP announcement are, I'm imagining, fielding a lot of questions from people who are concerned in their communities. This just throws a real wrench in a time that was already extremely stressful. There were already so many questions swirling about this topic. So it just kind of makes everything worse.
And the timing is quite curious, Like, who found this spreadsheet? Where did this information come from? How did the Republican Party get it? And why is it coming up now? Like, Griswold's office said that they uncovered it. They were talking. She talked to CPR's Ryan Warner and Kyle Clark on 9 News. We'll hear a little clip from that later. But she said that they uncovered this problem last week, but they were deciding whether or not to make it public when the Republican Party sent out their email blast.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I was listening to an interview with her this morning where she was asked, so you found out about this when the GOP told you about it, right? And she said, no, it wasn't them. We found out about it last week, but then very carefully did not say how the GOP
got a hold of
or
this information.
or actually how their office found it. Was it the person who accidentally did this.
Was it someone outside, like
did
if it was
someone
on the
flag
website
it for them?
Right.
I don't think that she's said yet exactly how they uncovered it.
My question about it is, what's the actual magnitude of the situation in relationship to its impact on our elections? Because, like you were saying, Elliot, this has already been a problem, a concern. There's this hysteria around, there's the stolen election folks. We had the Tina Peters situation here in Colorado. So there is a segment of folks who truly believe that our elections are not safe. Is this just it's hard to know with that current climate how actually damaging this situation was to vote counting or vote security. And it's, I don't know. I mean, because I believe in our election system, and I mean, we've had the clerk and recorder, Denver's clerk and recorder, Paul Lopez, on the show before. We've seen the transparency that they show with how things go. If you vote here in Denver, you know every step of the way where your ballot goes. You can get a text that you follow it. So for someone like me, this doesn't seem like a big deal. But I can see for someone who is already not trusting it, this seems like a huge deal.
No, well, let me give a quote here from a spokesperson from Griswold's office, because I thought this was compelling. This to me, this kind of put to bed the whole is this a real threat question. The spokesperson said there are 2 unique passwords for every election equipment component in the state, which are kept in separate places and held by different parties. Passwords can only be used with physical in-person access to a voting system.
And one is Jenna Griswold's dog's name, and the other one is Jenna Griswold's childhood address. Just kidding.
Well, what they're saying is these passwords, this spreadsheet that all people had to do was click on hide, that's only a partial password. You'll hear them say that all week. Griswold's been saying that. So whatever you could have gotten from this spreadsheet, you're not actually going to be able to go into a voting system, go and plug that into a machine in Mesa County or wherever, and hack it.
Or,
or
have access
change
to
the
it.
Numbers. Yeah.
Right.
Scramble it up and say Mr. Trump won when he didn't. So anyway, but how the perception question is important, because the messenger for this whole story was the Republican Party, Dave Williams, who has been complaining about Jenna Griswold for years. And
it's a partisan position. I mean, before Jenna Griswold, it was Wayne Williams, and I believe he was a Republican. Mm-hmm. So that's also part of this is I think the GOP felt like they have something on the Secretary of State, versus other positions in government.
Maybe it's time for a clip. This comes from Jenna Griswold's interview with Kyle Clark earlier this week. So speaking of Dave Williams' consistent complaints with her office, Kyle Clark, he did the research, here are the facts, and then we can hear Griswold's response and talk about how she's kind of, how she's defending our election system.
This is not the first time that your office has made mistakes that have damaged voters' confidence in our elections. In 2022, your office sent out mailers to 30,000 non-citizens inviting them to register to vote. They, of course, are not eligible to register to vote. That same year, your office used Colorado's ballot tracking system to send messages to specific Coloradans encouraging them to vote when, in fact, they had already voted, causing confusion that had to be cleaned up by the county clerks. And now this leak of the voting system passwords. Given your office's repeated errors that have damaged confidence in our elections, which you say is paramount, will you resign?
Absolutely not, Kyle. And I just want to, you're unfairly characterizing and leaving out some crucial information. We came out immediately and said a postcard had been sent out to people who are ineligible. The postcard clearly stated that someone had to be a U.S. citizen. No one tried to register from that group of people. We were actively tracking it, and it became a situation where no one registered. And to push back even further, Kyle, Colorado is tied for #1 in confidence in the country in our elections. We have stood up to situations time and time again to protect the right of Coloradans, going over and beyond what anybody would ask of civil servants in this office.
Elliot, what do you think about her response there?
My first reaction to that clip is just thinking about we have another kind of Kyle Clark mic drop moment, which we've had a lot of this year. But
on both, I mean, he's very good at doing this kind of interview with any kind of politician. I just want to say that is like he doesn't go after the GOP or the Democrats harder or different. And it was a classic Kyle Clark. Here's what I found.
Right. And I saw that the head of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners actually shared that clip and was like, okay, I don't agree with Kyle Clark on a lot, but I really appreciate him. Yeah, I'm paraphrasing, but
Libs of TikTok as well shared this.
Right.
Ooh.
Right.
Ooh.
I mean, credit to him.
No, credit to him.
Huge
I'm
credit
just
to
thinking
him.
about the attention that you don't want is like the libs of TikTok crowd. But I found it interesting that she said, I don't know where that information came from, that we're like number one in confidence around.
Yeah, tied for number one in confidence in our elections.
Like that's how I view it because of all of the information that we see about the security. So I wonder if this would play out differently in another state. Because of that piece of it, I don't think it will impact our elections that much, or at least people's belief in if they should go to the polls still, personally.
I think that even people who know a decent amount about elections, when they first hear that there was a simply press unhide button and then passwords, I think that's going to make people feel concerned. But I think there's two kind of things going on here. Is there actually an integrity issue and the perception side of it? Yeah. So I think that even those folks who are concerned, when they look into it a little bit further, the requirement to be in the voting place physically to use that password, in my mind, I would think that would assuage a lot of people's fears about the likelihood that this could be used to manipulate results. So, of course, I think getting that information out to voters and kind of letting them be at peace over that is a good call. But, I mean, it's impossible that it's not going to at least damage the perception of Colorado's elections. And, Kyle points out there that it's not the first time that this has happened. He also, earlier in that interview, really hammered her over the similarities with Tina Peters, which I think is obviously what the GOP is bringing up here. She was just sentenced to 9 years for what she did in Mesa County following the 2020 election. And I think that it's fair to ask questions of, are there similarities to that situation here? Because at the time, Jenna Griswold's office came out and said, well, even sharing one element of the passwords is a breach of security. And now the focus is more, well, there's all these levels. And she also points out, since that happened, we've added more levels of security because we saw that was such a breach. And so now we want to make sure that there's as many levels as possible of security. But it's still a fair question.
Yeah. I think what I worry about here is elections becoming a partisan issue. We already saw a huge impact on voter turnout among Republicans in the 2022 election. Lauren Boebert will talk about this a lot. She'll just say that this was one of the reasons why she didn't do as well as people thought she was going to do in her election. And that's a real thing if you look at the data. And I worry that Griswold, she's made some of these slip-ups that Kyle Clark pointed out, but she also did one other key thing this year that I think should be part of this conversation, which is she was very strongly in support of that legal challenge that was aiming to get Trump off of the ballot that went to the Supreme Court at the beginning of the year. Like, she championed that legal challenge. And I feel like Secretary of State's a partisan position, but if you're going to take such a stand like that and make the elections themselves partisan, I think you can expect attacks from someone like Dave Williams, especially, at a time like this. And that makes the election more vulnerable. The perception affects the outcome.
Well, it can be seen too as damaging her office's credibility.
Yeah.
In general, that's what I'm thinking about too. Is like, what does this mean overall too for the Secretary of State's office?
Yeah, like someone like Paul Lopez in Denver, our clerk and recorder, he would never do that.
No, and and that's a great point. Paul, is like, there's all these folks in these positions, that are overseeing elections, and now, what does this do to the credibility of their work? It doesn't just mean what's the credibility of the Secretary of State's office, but other people doing election work all around the state.
And this is kind of in a different direction. Don't want to get us off on this too much, but it's also a year where we're considering, should Colorado fundamentally change its entire election system?
That's a great point.
I wonder if it's going to affect how people vote on that.
Right, which is obviously ranked choice voting is like a way more complex tabulation process. And that's been, the opponents of that have pointed to that a lot and said, is this going to be able to be implemented? Are clerks going to be able to do it? And so, I just wonder if folks are going to be thinking about the vulnerabilities that do exist in our voting systems and getting worried about whether they could be exploited.
And if we could manage a big change like ranked choice voting,
right,
if we can't even manage the current system.
Although, maybe change feels like the safer option for the future. I don't know. I don't know how people will be seeing this.
Right.
Super interesting issue. I mean, we didn't even touch on the resignation question at all. There was a lot of calls for Griswold to resign. And she said to Ryan Warner on CPR, she said that the civil servant responsible for the breach, for the passwords being public, is no longer working for her office. I wonder, doesn't the buck stop with her?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. How far up should this issue go?
I wouldn't be surprised if she resigned.
I feel like we need to know more about how this accident actually happened to know what role she had. And I just don't really understand the whole hidden tab on the spreadsheet thing. I don't hide tabs on my spreadsheets. I want to look at all of them. So I don't really, I guess I just don't understand how it even happened. And
that has not been clear.
That has not been clear.
At least how they discovered it.
We're obviously in the early days of this. It does sound like her office is going to be doing the investigation, which obviously, folks outside of that are like, shouldn't there be kind of an independent look into this? Because it's hard not to at least have people wondering, was this on purpose?
Yeah.
Which she's saying, no, this was not on purpose. It really, really seems like an accident. But again, I get why people are worried about that from every side. I think there's a lot of people worried about election integrity right now.
Well, we'll be talking about it again on Tuesday. We'll be talking about the election all week. Next week, we'll be up late watching the results. We'll have them fresh for you on Wednesday morning, whatever results we have to report. I'm particularly interested how this is going to affect the governor's race in 2026. People talk about Griswold. Griswold talks about Griswold a lot in that race. So like other results are going to inform that as well. But that's just one of many topics. Stay with us. Right now, though, we're going to have to go to a quick break. We're going to come back, talk about big cat hunting.
This episode is brought to you by New Era Colorado. Young people are 1/3 of the electorate. New Era Colorado is a grassroots organization that organizes and mobilizes young people to participate in the political process, to harness their collective power to co-create a Colorado that serves all people. Growing up, my parents sat me down with their ballots and went through it with me even before I was old enough to vote. So then when it was time to vote, I used to have parties and invite people to my house to fill out our ballots together. It's a big election year in Colorado and nationwide, so be sure to vote by November 5th at 7 p.m. And remember, in Colorado, it's never too late to register to vote. You can register to vote or update your registration at a voter service center in your county. Just be in line by 7 p.m. on Election Day, November 5th. With a ballot in hand, you have the power. New Era Colorado is here to help be your guide. Just visit neweracolorado.org for more information. That's neweracolorado.org. This episode is brought to you by Denver Health. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we're talking about something incredibly important: life-saving mammograms. Breast cancer can affect anyone, but the good news is that with early detection, it can be caught and removed early. That's why getting regular mammograms is so crucial. The breast care team at Denver Health is committed to helping catch breast cancer early when treatment is most effective. A mammogram is quick, non-invasive, and can make all the difference. If you're 40 or older or have a family history of breast cancer, don't wait. Early detection saves lives. Take control of your health. Visit denverhealth.org/mammogram to schedule an appointment. That's denverhealth.org/mammogram.
All right, and we're back. Our hot topic this week is a ballot measure on the state level that I honestly have no idea what to do with. The more I read, the more confused I get. But what I do know is that 4 years ago, Denverites overruled rural Colorado communities in a vote to reintroduce gray wolves to Colorado. Now that the wolves are back and ranchers are living with the consequences, Colorado voters are faced once again with a proposal that could change how we manage wildlife in this beautiful state. Elliot, you've been covering Prop 127. Can we just start by explaining like what it would do?
Yes. So a vote yes on Proposition 127 would ban mountain lion hunting, bobcat hunting, and lynx hunting in the state of Colorado. So that's kind of the most basic part of it. There's a little bit of nuance in there. Lynx is actually already illegal to hunt at the federal level, so this would kind of just add in, if that were ever stripped, it would make it illegal in Colorado as well. There are some exceptions as well, like for accidents or for if there is an attack happening or something like that in defense. There are some exceptions. And if someone is found guilty of killing a mountain lion, hunting a mountain lion, they would be convicted of a Class 1 misdemeanor. So it's a pretty serious offense.
And it's like you said, so right now it's legal, but by license, right? You have to be licensed to be able to hunt them in the first place.
Yes, and it's limited by Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They determine each year based on the populations, based on all sorts of factors, how many licenses they're going to issue. So like, for instance, in the last hunting season in 2022, 2023, it was like 500 mountain lions were killed, which is compared to I think like 30,000 elk were killed that year. 500
mountain lions were killed? That's what we're talking. That's what this is about? Banning
yes.
the 5. Okay, interesting. Doesn't feel like a lot relative to how much money is pouring into this one.
But to me it feels like one of those testing ground things, the way the slaughterhouse stuff is here in Denver, is like trying it out to see how folks in Colorado feel about banning any sort of beginning the ban on hunting in general.
Right. And I think the proponents would argue not so much about the number of mountain lions. They are really focusing on the methods here of how mountain lions are hunted. Their biggest argument is really about the ethics of killing these animals, and they just really argue that it's unethical
to kill them at all.
It's not really about
because this is trophy hunting essentially, not hunting for meat.
So that is, you're touching on like one of the most contentious parts of this whole thing. So the proponents of this measure always call it trophy hunting. The opponents of this measure do not say that. And the state of Colorado does require that if you kill a mountain lion, you have to prepare it for consumption. But obviously they can't like go into your house and make sure that you're eating your mountain lion burger or whatever.
I know, and also like I don't know anybody that does that.
They say that they do. Hunters insist that they do eat them.
I've never heard of them before.
Biker gyms in whatever form of that restaurant you want to talk about has never had a mountain lion dog. They have an elk dog. They have a wild boar dog. They have a rattlesnake dog. So that is interesting to me.
And they say that it's not just for trophy hunting. The opponents of it, they say that it's there's more to it than that, that also CPW uses this as a way to control the populations, and it helps them keep a healthy number throughout the state. It's also worth noting these animals are not endangered in any way. Like that's not what the proponents are claiming at all. It's not a question of like, are we at risk of making any of these species extinct? Well, lynx are already federally protected, but bobcats and mountain lions are not close to being endangered in Colorado.
Yeah, the population control thing is interesting because I was talking to my uncle who's not a hunter, but he's a big fisherman, and he was just saying, at one point the population wasn't doing well, so they limited the amount of big cats that could be hunted. Now that population is more healthy, keeping it in control, to honestly, I guess to keep people safe was his concern. Was like, my uncle's wife lives in Winter Park, and he was like, I don't want a mountain lion to eat my wife, which is what he said at the dinner table. But he was just basically like, if there's no hunting happening of them, will the population grow so big that it becomes a danger to humans and maybe other, livestock?
Yeah. I saw an ad for this. I've been living up in my mother-in-law's place up in District 8 right now. We're getting flooded with ads for this. And there was one that had some footage of like a mountain lion out on someone's back porch. And then there was like, sadly, like a house cat that had been, the mountain lion had. And the ad was like, you don't want this mountain lion to do to your kid what it did to their cat. It was like, I don't even know what you're asking. What vote you're asking
I'm only
for
laughing
from me
because,
here.
this is not something I interact with on a daily basis in Denver. And again, this gets back to how Denver impacted the wolf reintroduction vote. Will Denver impact the big cat trophy hunting vote?
Elliot, tell us about that. How do you think Denver is going to fit into this vote?
I mean, that's going to be one of the main things I'm looking at on election night is which counties are in favor of this and which counties are against it. And if it ultimately passes or fails, I'll be definitely looking at the divide from the Western Slope and the Front Range and seeing if it does, mirror what happened with wolves at all, or if maybe the perception of making these kinds of changes through the ballot has changed since wolves. And since a lot of people, I think on the Front Range, have now started to hear a lot of stories from folks on the Western Slope, and they're like, I was part of that. And I have had, I cover the Western Slope, but I live in Denver. So my community is mostly Denver folks. And it's always interesting to hear people say like, oh yeah, I voted for wolves back then, and now I'm not going to vote for this because I saw that it seemed to really affect not me at all. Interesting.
Have you heard that from a lot of people? Because I'm going to be honest, I've heard the opposite. I hear people who are like, I voted for wolves, and like I see these stories, but doesn't change how I feel about the ecological argument for reintroducing wolves.
For sure. And like my random conversations with the weirdos I hang out with in Denver is not a poll.
Right.
But like I've heard both of those things. And so I think election night will be very telling to just see, is that a widespread thought or is it just a totally different issue? Because I mean, it is different, like reintroducing a species versus banning hunting of a species. Yeah. I could see it just, I think we want to make these parallels because it's something that affects Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and it definitely does. And there are parallels in that way. But I could also see there being, I don't know that it's going to be the exact same folks who vote one way or the other on those two issues.
I'm glad you brought up Colorado Parks and Wildlife because that was part of one of your stories that I found so interesting was the folks that work in Colorado Parks and Wildlife have had this really intense amount of stress after the wolf reintroduction because they're having to navigate conversations with ranchers who are losing cattle while also representing the ecological side of it. And I think that in your piece you said that they can't take a stance in this particular, they're not allowed to as an organization, but they're going to be bearing the brunt, again, maybe of the outcomes.
Right. Yeah. So as an organization, they're not able to take a stance. A employee association did, a group of employees did come out and say, we as employees do not support this measure, which was the first time that they've ever done that. And I think that was significant and really added to the conversation here because it's like, no, the government agency can't say that they don't support this. But the people who
organization representing
a portion of the people who work there said, we don't support this. And I think it was like 300 of the 1,000. I'm just saying that off the top of my head. So it's not like everyone that worked there was a part of this, but it was
but it's not an insignificant
amount of people.
Let's talk about the hunting question a little bit, because I think that's where this is a little bit different in Denver versus the wolves. Like the arguments for and against hunting, people are going to feel that differently because there's a lot of people in Denver that like to go hunting. This is a big business. It's not just a rural area. And I wanted to share a quote here. This is some data from the Common Sense Institute. This is a right-leaning group. They put out a report claiming that Prop 127 would reduce the number of mule deer and elk in the state, leading to as much as $61.65 million in lost economic activity from hunters every year. Like this would be a big blow to this hunting industry around the state.
Yeah, so I would definitely encourage people. I wrote about that study, and a couple people have written about that study, and I would ask folks to go look at the details of that study because.
Well, you think it's baloney?
I don't think that. I think that the supporters of 127 definitely call it baloney and say that the science, I mean, just if you look at the study that they used to come up with those numbers, the only scientific study that they cited basically said, well, this is just how many mountain lions, how many ungulates, which is like mule deer and elk, how many they kill per year. And it doesn't, it's not at all about so do they repopulate, or does the, like, it seems to me that there's a lot more complicated things going on than just like, oh, well, they ate that many, and so therefore there's that fewer for people to hunt. That's just and I tried to ask them about that when I wrote about the study. I was like, wait, is there more to this argument than just like, that's how many mountain lions are killing? And they were like, no, that's just kind of what we think.
Interesting. Well, there you go.
But they did, one more thing about that study real quick.
Yeah.
They did point out, because one of the biggest arguments that opponents have made is this is going to cost money. For CPW is funded largely by revenue from hunting. And so they calculated that number about how much elk hunting would be impacted, but they also looked at how much mountain lion hunting revenue brings in. And it turns out it's not a really significant portion of their revenue. It's like less than 1% comes from hunting licenses because there are so few actually killed each year.
Right. I think it's like $400,000 or something.
Yeah,
maybe
something like that, which is like in their whole budget is a really small portion. So I just say that to like, I thought that was a really interesting argument when I first heard that and was like, I want to look into that. And so I asked, when I saw their study, I went to the proponents and I said, do you guys agree with that number? Like that it, and they said yes. So they both have agreed that that's kind of would be the financial impact.
Well, let's talk about the money a little bit more because, you know, as much as the financial impact is, this thing has attracted like a ton of money, like on both sides. The backers, there's a lot of donations on both sides. Axios Denver reported that it's attracted $7 million and especially recently has become one of the most costly ballot fights in the state.
That's so wild to me.
Me too.
It's
I would
so
never
off the
predicted
radar
that.
of most folks I know. Not to say that people in Denver don't hunt, for sure, but it's just not an everyday conversation that I've ever had unless it comes up in something like this.
Truly.
But there is obviously there's a lot of industry here at stake then.
I guess so. That must be
Bass
it, right,
Pro
Elliot?
Shops is not a small place.
Is it Bass Pro Shops? Is that why that's happening, Elliot?
I just want to shout out the Bass Pro Shop in Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, is
That's
that
a
the pyramid
pyramid
one? I do want to go there. I do want to go there.
That place rules.
It's really weird and amazing. But like, I mean, it's big. I'm thinking, you know, my best friend grew up in a more rural area and her husband is definitely a hunter. I have friends in Grand Junction who grew up hunting. It's not a thing that's uncommon to us as Coloradans, but I just have to say it's not a daily life conversation we're having. This is really revealing something about us and who's invested in hunting here in Colorado.
Absolutely.
Who is invested, Elliot?
Yeah, I mean, so Cats Aren't Trophies, it has raised the fourth most of any committee in the state of Colorado. I have that pulled up now.
Those are the supporters
So
of the
those are
band.
the supporters. So since they use trophies, that's how you can kind of...
And I saw $1 million of that. The biggest contributor, the biggest single contributor, shocking to me, was the Wild Animal Sanctuary in Keensburg.
I was surprised too. I didn't know they would wade into something like this.
I had no idea they were both so wealthy and such a big
that was the
political
other thing
player.
too. Is I was like, not to act like a sanctuary should be broke, but like it's not. I didn't think it was a booming business.
Yeah, where'd they get $1
It's
million?
supposed to be a rehabilitation center for animals.
Yeah.
Another interesting campaign finance tidbit.
Uh-huh.
Remember in the pandemic, the
Tiger
tiger.
King.
Remember the Tiger
course,
King
yeah. Tiger King.
from pandemic days.
Yeah.
So remember Carol Baskin?
Sure.
She has donated to this campaign a significant amount.
Interesting.
So I feel like that
Good
has
to
not
know.
gotten a ton of attention, but I just think that's like kind of a funny pop culture tidbit here.
And that also just exposed a lot of us to an arena of the world we had never seen or heard about before. I had never experienced anything like that before watching Tiger King. So.
I mean, yeah. I hadn't thought about that either, but the fact this is about big cats, you know, these are big cat people. They're all weirdos, as we learned in that documentary.
Right.
Should we leave it? Let's leave it there. You know, we got a million questions about
and
this,
we'll see
but
what the outcome is on election night. It's going to be one
we'll
of those
talk about
races
it.
to watch. So
we want to hear from you too. If you have strong opinions
Yeah.
about the big cat hunting ban, the trophy hunting ban, some people are calling it. How are you making your decision about this as a Denverites? Because I honestly still don't know. Text or leave us a voicemail with your name and neighborhood, and you might hear it on the show. The Cats and Dogs hotline is open at 720-500-5418. Again.
that's making me think about this, Paul. We're a
What?
big city for pets.
Yeah.
Is this just that way into how people feel about big cats?
Shouldn't
guess
have
we'll
big
see.
cats, little cats? Also no, I would say. Anyway, 720-500-5418. Call, leave us a message, send us a text. One more break. We'll come back with wins and fails.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. As we roll into the holiday season, tensions and stress can run high. I have invitations for Friendsgivings and Christmas parties and seasonal get-togethers filling my inbox and group texts, which is a great problem to have. But it can also feel stressful because spending time with friends and family is great, but it can come with this added pressure to be our best selves when maybe we just aren't feeling it. My secret weapon to navigate these times? A good therapist. So why not try BetterHelp? It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime with no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/citycast today and get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/citycast. This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon. As the weather cools down, Pine Melon has everything you need to embrace fall. From peak season produce like apples, squash, and pears to seasonal decor like gourds and pumpkins, they've got you covered year-round. Pine Melon proudly partners with over 200 local farmers, ranchers, and producers across Colorado, delivering fresh, high-quality meats, baked goods, pantry staples, and more right to your door. No subscription needed. And that means you have access to same-day delivery in Denver and Boulder within a 2-hour window. Go to pinemelon.com to order locally sourced food today. Customers can use the code CityCastDenver at checkout for $35 off your first order of $75 or more. Join the movement today and support local makers and farmers at pinemelon.com. That's pinemelon.com.
All right, we're back. Best way to end the week. It's time for Rocky Mountain highs and lows, aka wins and fails. Each of us picked a recent local something we think is a win and another we think is a fail. We're going to talk about them. I am using my privilege of hosting today's show to start with a fail. My fail, which is just hilarious. She's honestly, my fail goes to Aurora City Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky. She's in the running for fail of the year for this whole Venezuelan gang hysteria. She's like been the number one champion.
That cannot stop
She's on one.
from
My God.
talking and posting and well, in this case, texting.
Yes, we're going to talk about this story from the Aurora Sentinel. They got a hold of some texts that Miss Jurinsky sent to some of her colleagues on city council about a debate over something that really it's not super relevant to what I want people to, it's obvious. I'll just read the text. So Jurinsky sent to her colleagues about a meeting, quote, I will not be, sorry, this is explicit also, watch out. Quote, I will not be at the meeting on Monday and every single one of you can go fuck yourselves. Her first message reads,
Yeah.
I fucking campaigned on that, you fucking pieces of shit. And fuck you, Dustin, all caps. And I hear you're a co-sponsor, Francois. You can definitely go fuck yourself. You've never owned a business or a fucking thing in your life, you pretentious bitch. My friendship will literally sorry, this is just incorrect. My friendship will literally with every single one of you is dead. Dead. Oh, and my loyalty? Also dead. I hope you all have miserable fucking lives. I might make that happen for a few of you. Fuck you.
This reminds me of high school and like my girl group implosion when we had a big blowout between a bunch of us. And this is what it sounds like. But she's talking to her colleagues on city council.
This is an elected representative.
Wow.
I saw that headline, but I had not read.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be on her rage text list. Whew.
I mean, she thinks she's big time now. She was at the Trump rally. She's going on
Dr.
Dr. Phil.
She is.
She's too big for the city council now. She's on to bigger and better things.
I would be so embarrassed if I was a constituent of hers and I had voted for her.
I don't know though. I mean, her people are like MAGA people. They're dark MAGA. They're all like masked off now.
Then do this on Signal or whatever right-wing people use to send message privately. What are you doing? I guess it doesn't matter if someone could just send it to the to a
Yeah.
journalist and say, hey, look at this text I got from my colleague.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know where this came from, but like clearly it was one of the people on city
Bananas.
council was like, Danielle just sent me this
And
unhinged.
thank you to that person, because nothing is more exciting than being privy to other people's weird texts.
Yeah, we'll post a link to that if you all want to
Wild
review
stuff.
those.
Thank you, Aurora Sentinel, too, honestly.
Yeah, Susan Green, great reporter.
Phenomenal reporter.
Elliot, you wanted to go give us a fail?
Okay, so my fail was going to be that I didn't do a Halloween costume. But we already talked
that's all
about
right.
that. Can I talk about a previous win of a Halloween costume as my fail to show
Sure.
the potential?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One time I went to Halloween as Print is Dead, and I just covered myself in newspapers and then put like splattered blood.
That's fun.
And if you go to a party of a bunch of other journalists, they all loved it. Everybody else
was a
is
hit.
like,
They did.
what is newspaper?
It was a hit. So that's like what I'm falling from this year. And that's why I'm disappointed in myself. And
You
came up
still
with
have
that.
time.
I know. Came up with that within 24 hours. Really easy to execute.
Sometimes last-minute costumes are the best for that
All the
reason.
time.
They're the spiciest, or like they're the most relevant, so you still have time. Well, by the time this airs, well, I don't know. What are you doing this weekend? You've got a couple days.
I've got a couple days. I was invited to a something on Friday that is still Halloween-y. So
You'll figure it out.
Yep.
You'll
Let us
figure it
know.
out.
Follow up.
We'll check in. Bree, what's your fail?
Oh, man. Okay. Well, over the weekend, this mural was covered up on the Bob Ragland Branch Library, which is attached to the Rhino Art Park. And the scene is still sort of unfolding as to how this happened. But, and I apologize if I pronounce any of this wrong, but I spoke with the artist of the mural, David Ocelot Garcia, and he had no clue. This was a commissioned mural that, by all accounts, he assumed it was going to live on for quite a long time. He also paints in acrylic, and it takes dozens of hours to do his pieces. And this piece was just painted over, and then during the Denver Walls street artist mural event, they just painted something right over it. And I've been trying to get a hold of Denver Walls. They still have not gotten back to me. I'd love to hear their side of the story. Like I said, I talked to David himself. I talked to Dr. Lucha Martinez de Luna, who is the head of the Chicano Murals Project. I talked to 3 different muralists I know, about their perspectives. And this was just was a shocking moment of what feels to me and what came across to me in this conversation with David is kind of an affront to the work that he does. And he was trying to be very open and saying I don't own this mural. It's not mine, but I did make it for the community. It was commissioned by Clinica Tepeyac, which is a health clinic here in Denver that serves Chicano and Latino people and everybody, honestly, anybody that needs mental health and physical health access. But it was very surprising to him. He didn't know it was going to happen. And the response from Denver Walls was this sort of long, convoluted Instagram post about how they said they went through the right channels. They said, quote, "This process went through approvals with multiple departments of local government, including Parks and Rec, Denver Arts and Venues, and the Rhino Art District. At no point in time did anyone raise flags on the installation of these new murals." That to me was very telling. Who was involved in this conversation? Because the other thing is, this is not the first time this has happened to one of David's murals. His mural at 8th and Federal, a similar thing happened out of nowhere overnight, painted over. It was something that had been commissioned for him. And it's a bigger, longer conversation that I hope that we can have. And it's still unfolding. I know David is still open and trying to figure out what's next. His hope is that it can be restored. But it just sort of highlights this tension in Denver around the history and culture of Chicano murals in particular and their place in our story, and then the commodification of street art and muralism and art districts and how these things can really not be in conversation with each other. So
I saw that the new mural they put up was tagged already.
Yeah, and so I talked to another muralist about that. And his thought was the streets will always respond. And this is sort of the nature of graffiti, which is different than muralism, which is different than street art. But a lot of times this is how, in the graffiti world, folks communicate with each other. You send a message. And so someone had already said, we don't like what has happened to the mural that was underneath this. And so my friend's perspective was this was a response from other artists. And David was very clear to say, I don't think that street artists or graffiti or anybody else is doing lesser art than me. But the art that I do is a calling, and it's a spiritual practice, and it's thought out and works with people in the community to tell stories. And it's not just as simple as like, oops, you forgot to call and ask me if you could paint over my mural. So I hope that it leads to a bigger conversation. I think David does as well. He's very open to having this conversation, but I can see why he can't help but feel slighted because it's already happened to him another time. So.
Yeah. And they didn't talk to him. Nobody talked to him. Nobody asked him. They said the Denver Walls Post said that there was a contract on the mural that expired that meant it could be painted over. He was like, I've literally never heard of such a contract. I have no clue. And this is a guy that works on city projects and state projects. He's not some rinky-dink artist. I mean, he's got multi-million-dollar installations across the city. This is his work. And so he was like, to hear there was a contract was kind of like, with who? So interested to see how this goes. There was a great piece in the GES Gazette from 2022 called Can Art Survive Here? And the first image in that piece in 2022 is this mural that disappeared. God. And I'll share that link. It's a great conversation with some other artists about how art interacts with communities and what that means with gentrification and all these other things. But this is something that Denver's got to figure out. We've got to do better. So we'll see. Yeah, I want to hear from some of these artists. Why don't they want to talk about it?
I think it's a very touchy subject. I mean, David was very open, but some other muralists is like, there's a code, like you don't want to talk down on other artists and their, how they do their work in the world. There's money involved here. It gets very complicated. But at the end of the day, this mural in particular was a piece of history, talking in conversation with the community about what was happening there. So we'll see. I'm hoping to hear more. I've got a call into arts and venues as well. So hoping to get more of the story.
Yeah, I'm curious. Very curious to learn more about what happened here.
Yeah.
And to understand this better.
This is a much more thoughtful fail than mine. And I just really feel like I dropped the ball.
No,
but
you didn't.
It also relates to my win.
Go for it.
Perfect
Give us your
segue.
win.
Because my win is actually about a much less serious mural. In fact, like the most unserious mural I've ever heard of, which is 9 News. Mark Salinger did a story, I believe, yesterday on Wednesday that was about this dispute between neighbors in Colorado Springs. So between an apartment complex and a tattoo shop in Colorado Springs. Sounds like the apartment building kept towing customers of the tattoo shop. It was like unclear where people were supposed to park. They towed like a bunch of their customers. And so the tattoo shop put a mural on their roof with a bunch of phallic symbols, like covered their roof so that anybody who lives in the apartment building next door, when they look out,
they have to all the dicks.
Look at that. And the way that Mark Salinger went about it, the story is really funny because, of course, like it's 9 News. They can't show this mural. And so they like tried to find kind of, I think, a really funny way to like still tell the story. And especially during a week when things are so tense, it was just really nice to see a story that was like interesting and kind of funny. And
I love the use of art in this.
The use of art.
Moment.
Yeah.
It can send a message.
Creative solutions.
Yes.
I just pulled up the 9 News story. It looks like a good story, but I need to see the uncensored version of this thing.
I know. I don't know.
I'll have to comb Instagram. I'm sure someone has shared it somewhere.
That is a good one, though. That's really funny.
That's a great one.
That's the kind of pettiness that just like I live for. Like I don't want to be in the middle of that dispute, but I do want to watch it.
And it looks like part of it says, "We used to have a view," is in the corner.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Good for those people.
Oh my God.
I'll go next.
Yeah, go for it.
Mine comes to us from Westward, who reviewed the city's 311 call data and found that 2024 is on pace for way fewer complaints about unhoused people in Denver.
Oh.
Quote, since 2022, the city of Denver has recorded nearly 60,000 complaints from residents contacting 311 about homeless encampments across the city. In 2024, that number is on pace to drop by about 10,000 complaints compared to each of the past 2 years.
Wow.
My dream is that is due to tolerance and change in minds about people's lived experience. But I have a feeling it's more about sweeping encampments.
Yeah, it's probably about sweeping encampments. But I mean, whatever is happening in the city, I think fewer complaints is a win. People maybe are more satisfied or happier with getting through the city and, just not complaining as much. That's great.
And maybe just leaving some more room for other issues that the 311 people have to deal with every day. That's crazy. That's interesting. Interesting data point for sure.
Yeah, interesting. It's good, It's very hard to see what's really happening with like the big homelessness work that the mayor's doing.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, he has his own way of talking about it, and like you hear reporters look into a little piece of it, but there's so many organizations involved. There's so many people with different experiences and different ways to track these things,
yeah,
and it's
the
notoriously difficult to like follow up with individuals, and so you never know. But here, this is one piece of data that says maybe we're moving in the right direction.
That's an interesting data point to look instead of like numbers of this or that, to just look at like how upset is the community about this, or like how much are people complaining.
Vibes are a little better.
Yeah.
Vibes are better.
It's got to be good for everybody.
Bree, what's your win?
Yeah, Colorado has been making an effort to make voting more accessible to incarcerated people. There was this great story from Denverite about the work being done in Denver in particular that has spread across the state. But clerk and recorder Paul Lopez, along with the Denver sheriff, the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition, and the League of Women Voters have been working since last election to increase voter access for folks in jail. And so they're getting more people registered, streamlining ballot station accesses during the height of election season, and just informing folks who are in jail who might not be aware. I mean, they told this really beautiful story of a gentleman who was voting for the first time, and he was 36 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought, again, we're talking about election integrity, all of these issues. There's other stuff that folks in this world are working on, and that's voter access. And I thought, what a cool thing for Denver to be leading on, and even better that it's spreading throughout Colorado.
That just feels good.
It feels great.
I love that. That's a great win.
I love that. I was thinking a lot about like my experience as a voter has been since I was 18 years old. My parents were very set on me voting in every single election, and that's not everyone's experience. So if folks are learning about that while they're incarcerated, even better to start getting someone voting for the first time who's definitely impacted a lot by legislation that we pass.
Yeah, why not?
So
why not? Have you all voted yet?
No.
Oh my gosh, I'm such a procrastinator.
Me too. I don't even think it's procrastinating though. I've made this point many times.
I'm not sure about some stuff.
I'm unsure about some stuff, but you never know what's going to come up.
That's also it.
Before
is that
Tuesday.
I'm always like, well, what if something comes up? Like, what if something comes
journal,
out that I want to know?
This is the journalist table where we're like, we know how stories break.
But I think I'm just being more honest with myself when I say I'm just procrastinating. Like, I try to like,
and you know it's going to take like an hour.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
I did do I like got friends together and was like, ask me any questions you have about statewide ballot measures, because man, can I talk about them? And they were like,
God, you are such a gift.
Thank you.
Friends,
they did not listen.
I was like, I get calls like this all the time. I'm just going to send them to you and be like, I don't know the statewide stuff, but Elliot knows it. So that's awesome.
What were the hot topics in your friend group? What were the like contentious ones?
I think ranked choice voting, people had a lot of questions about, because they were just like, not. If you're not familiar with that concept yet, it's really hard to explain. I had to like pull out YouTube videos and talk about like why there is even anybody who thinks this is a good idea, or like what are the pros and cons. But yeah, I mean, also the big cat hunting is contentious. Like you're saying, I think a lot of people are just like, I don't really know where I fall on this. And I've had some people just say, I'm just not going to vote on it at all because I don't know what I want to do.
I'd be curious what that undervote looks like on some of these initiatives that folks are just don't feel equipped to make a decision.
Right. Which I just always wonder how much people do that, because I kind of forget that's an option. I feel like
to undervote
or to just not vote.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I were to make a prediction on that one, it would be that there'll be an undervote.
Be interesting.
People just don't want to weigh in.
Yeah.
Anyway, here we are at the end of the show. Wow. Election day on Tuesday again. Join us Wednesday morning. We're going to have reactions. We're going to break down the votes for you. All week we'll be talking about it, and we want to hear from you. If you got thoughts, you got last minute thoughts, insights, information people need to hear before they vote, call in. Send us a text with your name and neighborhood, 720-500-5418. Again, 720-500-5418. Bree, Elliot, wow. What a great show. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for having me back on.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. Our producers this week were Olivia Jewell-Love, Francisco Kilgore, and me, Paul Caroli. Peyton Garcia writes our morning newsletter, Hey Denver. Bree Davies is our host. Our music is by Los Mocochetes, with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at CityCast Denver, and tell Denver Walls about us the next time you see them. You can sign up for that daily newsletter I mentioned and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. They're taking over the foothills. They're clearing out the Coors Light from the liquor stores. Good, hardworking Americans can't get their Coors for the après-ski. Sad.